How does learning happen in organisations? Does it just happen on an individual basis, or do teams and organisations learn? If so, how does that happen? How does coaching increase organisational learning? These are some of the questions we'll be considering in this session on organisational learning. So at the end of this session, you'll be able to describe what is meant by organisational learning, identify single, double and triple loop learning, and assess the value of organisational learning. So how do organisations learn? Swearinga and Wierdsma say that organisational learning is collective learning, where not only the person who is doing the job improves, but others in the organisation also change the way things are done. It brings about learning and change, not only in the individual, but also in organisational behaviour. So that change does not only stay with the individual, but changes the organisation's behaviour as well. Kim adds to this by suggesting that individual learning becomes embedded in the organisation's memory and structure. So he brings in this notion that an organisation has a memory, that although individuals may come and go, the organisation has a memory whereby learning is stored and recalled. And as Hedberg says, organisations do not have brains, but they have cognitive systems and memories. Members come and go and leadership changes, but organisations' memories preserve certain behaviours, mental maps, norms and values over time. Argyris and Schoen say that the link between individual and organisational learning is shared mental models. Mental models being the frame or perspective that we hold of things. And when teams learn, then you get the evolution of shared frameworks and routines. So learning goes from the individual learning to team learning to organisational learning. The team processes that enable team learning are regarded by Argyris and Schoen to be framing, where each individual team member's mental models, past understanding and present inputs lead to initial perceptions of something. Then there is reframing, where new understanding along with the development of common vision, purpose and methods of operating. Next is integrating perspectives. This happens by resolving conflicts. And from these, new frameworks and routines are created, which are not just confirmation of individual mental models, they are more than that. They are synergistically created. Then there is experimenting, when new ideas, routines and team roles are tested and tried out. And as a result of all of this, learning is shared through the process of crossing boundaries. That is, communicating across boundaries, be they the boundaries between individuals, between teams, or between organisations. This communication is essential to the creation of shared mental models. There are thought to be 3 types of learning that occur in organisations: single loop, double loop and triple loop learning. According to Argyris and Schoen, single loop learning is when the error detected and corrected permits the organisation to carry on its present policies or achieve its present objectives. Then that error and correction process is single loop learning. Single loop learning is like a thermostat that learns when it's too hot or too cold and turns the heat on or off. The thermostat can perform this task because it can receive information, that's the temperature of the room, and take corrective action. So let's imagine that an organisation is having difficulty with some of its suppliers, with the quality of the goods supplied and the delivery times. So the person or the team responsible for this will have had information coming in that means that they've learned that things are not going as they would like. So they look at the procedures for dealing with the situation and send out letters to the suppliers reconfirming quality and delivery requirements and suggesting that if these are not met in the future, it will look to other suppliers and then monitor progress. This would be single loop learning. In the situation I've just outlined, there has been learning that something is not right, and existing ideas and procedures, etc., are used to take action, and then they wait and monitor the response. Double loop learning, on the other hand, is where the error is detected and corrected in ways that involve the modification of an organisation's underlying norms, policies and objectives. This is where the underlying assumptions and values of an organisation are examined and changes in the frameworks and routines are made, and action taken, and then the response monitored. So in the situation regarding the suppliers that we talked about before, with double loop learning, the organisation might look at its whole procurement system, and maybe in particular its relationship with its suppliers, and decide to move toward having fewer suppliers but creating more of a partnership with these ones, and so completely changing the nature of their relationship. That would be double loop learning. So it will have learned about what is happening, closely examined and reflected on its underlying frameworks and routines, values, taken action as a result of doing that, and then monitored the response, and taken that learning to continue around the cycle, and it will have carried out double loop learning. So what is triple loop learning? Triple loop learning is learning to learn better. Suringer and Wierdsma start their chapter on learning with the statement, someone who only knows what he has learned and not how he learned it still has a lot to learn. This is true of individuals and also of organisations. And how does triple loop learning work? Well, according to Argyris and Schoen, when triple loop learning occurs, they reflect on and inquire into previous episodes of organisational learning or failure to learn. They discover what they did that facilitated or inhibited learning. They invent new strategies for learning. They produce these strategies and they evaluate and generalise what they have produced. This comes from conversations like, how did we do in handling this situation? What did we do well? How could we have improved how we approached it? What is there for us to learn from the way we work together? How can we improve that? What learning is there from the way other teams in the organisation operate and learn? So diagrammatically, the process looks like this. There are barriers to organisational learning, and these include what is known as incomplete learning cycles. That is, where for a variety of reasons the learning cycles are not completed. For example, where an organisation's resistance to change and learning is greater than the individual's initiative, or where the connection between the action that was taken and what is happening as a result is not made, or where individuals learn but are not or are unable to share the learning. Next, some organisational structures and cultures don't encourage organisational learning. For example, highly hierarchical structures and bureaucratic systems that inhibit innovation, creativity and sharing. Nystrom and Starbuck in 1984 stated that before organisational learning can take place, then the organisation needs to unlearn its existing cultural norms. This unlearning process can be difficult and form a barrier. Then there are individual strengths, weaknesses and learning styles that can be hugely helpful and sometimes can be a barrier. And finally, mental models. Senji in 1990 gives ways in which mental models may inhibit organisational learning. These being generalisations being treated as data, so action being taken on assumptions rather than facts. Or managers being good at selling their own views but not so good at discovering other people's opinions. Or that despite espousing on a particular theory or way of doing things in the organisation, people actually use another one when doing things. Also entrenched habits that stop people from saying what they're thinking. And finally, that the symptom is being treated rather than the cause. Here's an exercise for you to help you think through the implications of organisational learning and coaching. How do the different levels of learning impact on organisations? Assess the role of coaching in organisational learning and its impact on the 3 levels. Please write your answers to this.